Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the We Get to Do This podcast. This week, we get to have on another first-time guest and first-time topic.
We had on Jillian Tholen, registered dietitian. We got to talk about all things nutrition, eating, and things that are important for everyone, but especially us as runners and endurance athletes.
We hope you enjoy the episode.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to another episode of the We Get to Do This pod. It's been a little while since we've had a guest on, so very excited to have Jillian here, who is a registered dietitian. And Jillian, well, first of all, we haven't had anybody talk about nutrition on the pod before, so very excited to have you here because I feel like we're both very passionate about nutrition and love talking about it, but we've never actually had like a professional who specializes in this on the pod. So thank you for being here. And we would love to hear how we always start our guest podcasts is, who are you? Who's Jillian? What do you do? And why do you do it?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm really honored to be the first nutrition expert or person you're having on, professional, given I know that both of you work with a lot of runners and nutrition is a big accessory part of what you both do as well. So I'm really glad to be here, and yeah, it's cool to be that person. I'm Jillian. I'm a registered dietitian. I have a specialty license in sports dietetics, which just means I specialize in sports nutrition. I guess I'm just thinking about how to succinctly share my origin story. I work mostly with endurance athletes and with disordered eating and eating disorders. Those are kind of like my two main populations that often overlap, not always, but there is definitely a value to having background in eating disorders and disordered eating when working with this population. So those are kind of my two areas of expertise, and I work with clients of all ages and all abilities kind of within those two groups. I have been a dietitian I actually couldn't even tell you it. I have to really think hard about it for when I kind of like took my licensing exam, but I think it was maybe 2014 or 2015 that I started, and I currently work in private practice. I've worked in intensive treatment for eating disorder, like that kind of world. I've worked in clinical nutrition, I've worked in pediatric nutrition, I've worked in orthopedic care, and kind of a long winding road has brought me to now just doing private practice, which is really cool. Like I'm so grateful. I feel really lucky to be where I'm at, and like a lot of stars had to align for me to get to this place. So I do what I do because I'm a lifelong endurance athlete as well. I've been running since I was in like 4th grade, probably. I couldn't even tell you again. Like when I started running, my dad was a runner. We used to run road races growing up, and I ran cross country and track in high school. Also played basketball, which is a really important thing about me. And then I ran in college. That was a really big deal. I really wanted to run in college. I got pretty serious about it in high school. In college, like I would say, like, I had a great experience. I loved it. I made so many mistakes with nutrition, and that's kind of where I think that interest started for me as well. And I think I don't know if a lot of dietitians would say this, but I think there's a really big subset of people who are interested in nutrition who also struggle with nutrition in one way or another, if that makes sense. And that's part of what gets them into it. And I think that kind of was my situation in college, but I just love the world of endurance athletics, and I, again, like made enough mistakes myself to be interested, but also now to be in a place where I really want to help other people not make those mistakes. I also really love learning, and so it's really fun to learn about the research that's coming out in terms of like fueling and REDs, which we'll probably talk about, and making sure that we get enough food and timing and all of those kind of fun things I think are fun about nutrition. So I guess that keeps me going too. But in short, the reason I do what I do right now is because I love helping people. I love making a difference, and I also just love seeing people kind of like have these kind of light bulb moments and just gain this confidence in fueling themselves, doing it well, and then they reap the rewards with performance, right? Or, I mean, in some cases, just like a healthier relationship with food, and they don't have to think about it all the time. It doesn't consume their life, which again, sometimes those go hand in hand. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I love it. So many different areas we could go with that.
I know.
I think it's really interesting how selfishly almost I relate, and I'm sure Kaylee does as well. I know Kaylee does, that the career path we have all chosen, we've ended up there because we've been, in a sense, trying to figure something out about ourselves, right? I think that's cool. I think that honestly, that's probably what makes us all passionate about what we're doing too. You know?
Yeah. Why we care so much.
It's so helpful in relating to clients' experiences or athletes' experiences too, when you can be like, oh yeah, well, I did that one time and this is what happened to me, or I tried this and this was helpful, or even just I know what you're dealing with. Like, I get it. I've been there. It's really hard.
Right.
I think that is so important. And I think, like you're saying, Jacob, I think it sets different providers apart for their areas of expertise, right? Like, we're kind of niche in this area, and that's also great, I think.
Right. I mean, how crazy is it how all three of us, completely different fields that we're in within the industry, are specializing too with endurance athletes? Like, how cool is it that the endurance realm has grown that much? I mean, in high school, when people asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or what are you going to college for? I didn't know. Like, what I'm doing now, I didn't even know it was a thing, right? And, you know, acupuncturist, nutrition, that registered dietitian, specific for endurance athletes, it's important.
Right.
You know, and I think it's a privilege in itself too that we all get to specialize in that. So that's pretty cool too.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wait, so how did you like now get into private practice? Like, what was like the story with?
It is an interesting story. Okay, to think through for a second. So my first job was working at the Emily program, and I worked in treatment, like eating disorder treatment for adolescents. And after a handful of years, I decided I want to try something different. Just like I'd never done anything else in dietetics. I wanted to see what else was out there. And so I got a job working at Children's, doing some clinical nutrition in pediatrics. And my position was part-time, which is an important part of the story. But we often got like flexed up to full-time. Anyway, I kind of realized pretty quickly that was like not going to be someplace I was going to stay for a long time. It was a good experience, but it was just like not quite exactly where I wanted to be in the world of dietetics, because you can do a lot of different things as a dietitian. And so I kind of had this part-time job, and I had a friend who, she was actually in my research lab when I was in grad school at the U in nutrition, and she had essentially like a relative who owned a therapy practice where they had like a therapy group contracted with therapists, and this relative of hers had asked her if she wanted to just like see some clients for nutrition, because she has a PhD in nutrition. And my friend was kind of like, I don't know how to do that, but okay, that sounds interesting. And so she kind of fell into doing this and just happened to ask me if I would be interested. And this was like kind of random. Our practice was out in like Golden Valley. I mean, I've lived in St. Paul for a long time. But so I was like, sure, I would like to do something else. This seems interesting. I can kind of like see people one-on-one, which sounds like it would be more fulfilling to me and more what I want to do and more tailored to my interests than kind of what I am doing in my clinical job. And so I just started seeing clients that way, and like made an Instagram account, you know, and learned all about billing and coding and documentation and like taxes as a contractor and all that really like boring stuff. But that is the short story of how I got into private practice. And then I have since, I'm not at that practice specifically anymore, nor is my friend. And I now work at a practice with several old colleagues from the Emily program. So we have we have our office in Northeast, and Cultivate Counseling is where I work right now, and it's great. Like, it's a lot of friends, great other providers, but that's it. It just like was so random to start doing that. I think it was 2018, and then I think I moved to practices in 2020, and yeah, it's been great. But again, I like can't believe that I get to do that, you know, like I can do this now, and it happened kind of by accident, just because someone I knew was like, do you want to do this with me?
Mm-hmm.
And like I knew nothing about it, like I don't know any. I mean, I'm sure you guys feel this way too, but I didn't have any, I guess I don't know, but I don't have any formal training in like being a business owner or any of those types of things, and it's just so much learning on the fly over the last like 7 or 8 years. That's also something I don't reflect on very much, but feels like a big accomplishment when I think about it.
It is
Like the
Oh,
things
yeah.
you have to learn.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're like
Yeah.
not being like an RD or an acupuncturist or trainer. It's like you're covering like 10 different hats
Oh,
at
for
all
sure.
times.
Yes, accounting, marketing, like
Customer
all of that
service.
stuff. Yeah, administrative assistant.
Yeah.
1,000%. Yeah, you guys get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, kind of to dive into the endurance realm a little bit and nutrition specifically. I would say, from my personal experience, I have no research to back up what I'm about to say. I would say like 90% of the endurance athletes that come through the door and that I see, and that I have seen over the past 5+ years now, struggle with nutrition, just in some way.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you, this is not even a great question maybe, but if you have any idea why the endurance realm seems to have that many people that struggle. And struggle can mean whatever, right? And there's so many different things, like knowing what to eat, if it is like a ED or a disordered eating related thing, if it's fueling on a run, whatever it is, but like just some kind of struggle, I feel like it's probably higher than 90%.
It probably is. And I actually do have an answer for this. I think it's kind of two parts, but they go together. And I think one of the biggest issues that endurance athletes face when it comes to knowledge about nutrition, understanding, putting things into practice, is that so many endurance athletes who, as we know, have like crazy high needs compared to the average sedentary population, they're taking in any nutrition information that's like anywhere in the world, searchable on Google, from their doctor, love doctors, but from their doctors, from their parents, from the like anywhere in the media, social media, that's not meant for endurance athletes, and applying it to themselves. So what that often results in, and I guess this is kind of what I see mostly, like in a lot of endurance athletes, I would say again, like maybe 90%, it often results in not eating enough food and not focusing on the right types of food. So that's like my short answer. And I think it is very much also then related to like social media, what people put out on social media without media literacy even as well, but you know, non-credentialed influencers or even some medical professionals. There's just like a lot of misinformation out there, even in like the sports specific realm. But I think that, yeah, the short answer is like, there's a lot of information that's not meant for endurance athletes, that endurance athletes take as meant for them.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get past that then when people are coming in to see you and they kind of have all these perceptions of what nutrition looks like, what they should be feeling like? How do you get past that?
I think it has to be a gentle approach, right? So kind of getting at some of what their beliefs are, or their like what have they been doing. I mean, a lot of people would, in a lot of cases, people come to see me because something isn't working. Sometimes it's because they're just curious about like how to do better or like fuel for a specific purpose, which I also love. But maybe it's a female athlete who's not getting a period, or a male athlete who's really struggling with like repeat bone stress injuries, or just like poor performance or fatigue or something like that. So it's a lot of like digging into first, what is going on now, what are you doing now, and then the why behind it. And a lot of times that gets into like, well, why are you doing it this way? Or what did you hear that led you to doing this thing, right? So that provides then, once we get at like their why, there's a lot of opportunity for education, right? But we have to get curious first. Like, why are we doing it this way? Where did we learn this? Why did we think this was a good idea or the way to do it? And of course, very like kindly and gently. Like, this is not like an interrogation. But I think that once we can kind of get curious and once I can kind of get curious and help my athlete, look deeper into the why, then we can kind of always also examine, like, well, maybe why isn't that the most helpful for your body or your performance? And also there's a nice opportunity for education there, which is so key too, because I find that, my brain works this way, but I think a lot of athletes are very similar, like very driven and very data driven a lot of the time, and we just like want to know why. We don't just want to take what somebody is saying at face value and implement that, and I would honestly encourage that perspective. So I think that's kind of, in a short answer, how I would get at some of those things for people.
Yeah. I had a conversation. It reminds me of on Monday. I had a conversation. They were actually talking about. I think they might have referenced David Roche even, and like the high carb, just like the high carb hype that's going on right now, like the super high carb, 100 gram plus per hour type of deal, and how actually on, I guess the other spectrum of first time marathon runner ever training for that distance, started eating that many carbs during their runs,
just like from 0 to 100.
Yeah, like from the start point, right? Just the first training block. That's what Google said. Like, you need to have a ton, right? It's kind of like in my world, how endurance athletes need to lift heavy, right? Low reps, lift heavy, and that there's truth to that. But if you've never lifted before and you start doing that, right, it can, right? So that's where,
well.
Good
I think that's a really great example of like the other side of it too, with media literacy and like understanding how to take in that information. That's something that's totally meant for a runner, but it's not meant for someone who's never done that before, and that kind of context isn't included all the time, I think that's a really good example. And you bring up carbs, like that is for sure the number one battle I fight with any athlete or endurance athlete. Like, well, I was told that I shouldn't eat carbs, or I thought carbs were bad for me, or I thought they were unhealthy, or even just sugar in general, right? Like, is sugar bad for me? Should I ever eat sugar? My doctor told me I shouldn't have. It's just such an uphill battle with carbs sometimes. But I think sometimes with a little bit of education around like how detrimental it is to not get enough carbs in some ways, it's not too hard to be convincing. And then when you add the performance aspect in, it's usually like pretty okay. But it can be really challenging too, because our culture is just very much demonizing of some of these specific nutrients.
Right.
That's why I think so also for context, Jillian and I, we officially talked at Stride to She in August. So running camp out in Wisconsin. And after your talk, it was so funny and good because people were coming up for the rest of the weekend, showing you Jillian, look I'm eating before my run, or I'm eating these carbs, and everyone was so proud to even just talk about it and show you, And I feel it's just that empowerment aspect of it's okay to eat these things. They are good for you. You should be eating before your run. You should be eating during your run, and depending on the run, and after your run. You should be eating carbs. And I think sometimes it takes, somebody like you to be it's okay for you to eat that.
Yes.
Especially as an endurance athlete. And I just, again, just thinking about it, clearly I would go as far to say is a lot of those people clearly weren't doing that. Otherwise they probably wouldn't have been so excited to, talk about it. And to be Jillian told me to do this, So I think that's a very, you have a very powerful role in that, and just empowering people to be eating enough and to be eating certain things and to not have the shame around that.
Oh yeah, the shame. That's a huge piece, I think, for a lot of people. And whether or not there's some kind of a disordered tendency there. But again, one of the other things I like to kind of get curious with people about is just their relationship with food. thus far in life. And I think even if we're talking about sports nutrition, that's really telling and can be really helpful to understand like where some of your tendencies and habits come from, because a lot of the times we don't just make this stuff up, we pick things up, and things are modeled to us, and we have experiences one way or another that like lead us to having these judgments or like feeling shame around certain foods or nutrients or portions or whatever it is. I feel like it can be a really important thing to talk about too. And then just helping people feel more comfortable with the amount of food that they need and the types of food that they need as endurance athletes as well. Like I think, to kind of like echo David Roach on here, I think one thing that he or Megan said in a podcast I listened to one time was, and this always stuck with me, he said runners should be impressive eaters. Like you should be an impressive eater. And I just love that kind of vibe. Like, if you are eating more than somebody next to you, that's probably a good thing, right? It's not a bad thing. But we just like need a lot. And we should be proud of like the amount of food that we need to fuel what we're doing, in a sense. Like there's just so much shame around like eating too much or like worry about that kind of thing. And like the flip side is actually true. Like there are far more consequences to not eating enough than there are to eating too much, which is like even hard to do as an endurance athlete. And I feel like that is also a message that I really try to drive home to athletes in so many words, or like, even by examining what's going on. But it's just, nobody talks about that because our culture is so focused on, it's so like weight centric and focused on restriction and being smaller, and that doesn't help us. That doesn't help us as athletes. I mean, most people it does not help. But for athletes in particular, a focus on being smaller or trying to like look a certain way doesn't generally line up with like best performance or health. And health and performance certainly go hand in hand as well when we're trying to optimize something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Why can that be detrimental?
what? Not getting enough?
No, specifically thinking being smaller, or how do you say it? Being smaller as an athlete, not leading to certain things you want.
Well, I guess one of the things that I think about is, if I think about like, there's so much diversity and variation in body sizes, right? Just like in the population, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Like we're different heights, we have different size feet, hands, like bone structures, like set point weights, all of those things. And I think when one person is fueled adequately standing next to another person who's fueling adequately, their body weights could be completely different, but also like their performance would be at its best, if that makes sense. I don't think I articulated that very well, but I guess if we're thinking about how to best fuel our bodies, right, that's probably going to require a certain amount of nutrition. And that amount of nutrition that's good for our bodies, that meets our needs, that keeps us healthy, is going to be where our body's going to find its happy weight, and we're going to be able to be the strongest, like be the best optimized in terms of our muscle composition. We're going to be able to train the most consistently because we're going to recover. We're not going to be getting injured all the time. Our bones are going to be healthy, right? Like when we focus on getting enough rather than trying to look a certain way, we're focused more on like being healthy and performing, right? And taking care of our body. When we're focused on looking a certain way, especially if it's not a weight that your body wants to be at, or maybe your body fat percentage is too low, or if it requires restriction, you're not setting yourself up for best performance, right? Because you might get injured more often. You might get sick more often. You might struggle to recover from your workouts if you're not getting enough, right? If you put yourself in that state of that energy deficiency, right? That low energy availability is kind of like the term for it, where you're just like not getting enough overall. You set yourself up for a lot of potential consequences that don't generally align with like best performance, which is a really long answer, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah.
Couple questions, but is there such thing as too much for somebody? Like, how would somebody know? They're like, okay, I am an endurance athlete. I know I need to eat a lot. And they are a very impressive eater. Is there such thing as too much? How do they know that?
Good question. I think that's one area where we can, in general, rely on our bodies to tell us, right? Like we can think about how we have cues that signal fullness, satisfaction, if we're thinking about like that end of things. And typically, if you're pushing yourself way beyond fullness quite often, sometimes maybe that means you're eating too much. If maybe, gosh, it's really tough to know like exactly how to define that. Because the other thing I would say is like sometimes with sports nutrition we have to eat when we're not hungry, but we're not really talking about that. We're talking more about like pushing yourself beyond your point of fullness consistently. That might mean you're getting more than you need. But again, it's so nuanced because like maybe you're working on increasing intake for whatever reason and your body's adjusting to that. So you do have to do that for a bit of time. Or like you have a really big workout tomorrow and you're trying to like make sure that you've topped off your carb stores, things like that. So it's just like there's no great answer there either to know like what it might feel like or look like to get too much, if that makes sense. Because you could also be really full after eating like a lot of fiber, but then maybe you didn't get a lot of like energy from that. So yeah, I don't really have a great answer for that.
No, it's okay.
It feels nuanced, right? Like most things.
Right. All of it is.
Right.
But, and even like, I think you talked about this at Stride to She too, but even like as people like are tapering, so like some of us like don't get as hungry because you're not working out as much and you're not burning as much in your runs and stuff. But like, do you tell people like, do you talk about like continuing to eat through that because you're still like recovering and then after the race, like refueling?
Yeah, so tapers are kind of interesting because I think sometimes, depending on the length of your taper, right, and the kind of the length of your race coming up, tapers might also coincide with like a carb load. So in that way, right, like you might be not running as much, but really focusing on kind of shifting your diet to more carb intake, which also is like very filling and certainly energy dense. But if we're not talking about a carb load, I think a taper is a really great time to practice listening to your body as well, right? Like if you were running 50 miles a week and now you're running 30, you probably aren't going to be as hungry, right? You're probably still going to eat your pre and post runs, snack, meal, whatever, but maybe you find that like you can have 2 scoops of rice at dinner, you don't need that third one, and you're like, I'm good. Or you don't need as large of a snack or another bedtime snack or something like that, right? I think that your body can tell you outside of just like making sure you're still getting your 3 meals in and eating your snacks and not going too long without eating and meeting those basic needs. I think that I wouldn't want you to just like blanket keep things the same if that felt like, oof, I'm really not this hungry.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Can we transition into like, I love talking about like women's health and like hormones and stuff.
Yes.
How do you address that? Do you address that? And like, do needs change like with women's like cycles and menopause? Like, I'd love for you to be able to, I know it's like a huge topic, but
I think this is something I do work a lot with, whether it's just talking, like you're saying, providing education around needs throughout the menstrual cycle, or because they do change, or talking about like how to get someone's period back that's gone missing, or that they tend to lose during cross country season, but then it comes back like for the rest of the year. It comes up a lot with female athletes. I think a big space right now of interest is also perimenopause and postmenopausal female athletes, because we're seeing generations of women who have been more serious athletes for the first time kind of get into those age ranges and are trying to figure out like how to stay active and feel good in their bodies and fuel appropriately. And there's just kind of like different topics in all of those realms. But I guess like when we think about it always comes back to education, right? Like if we know somebody's period goes away when they're training harder, there used to be this perspective of like, oh, well, yeah, that's just what happens when you're a runner and just like you're running. So yeah, your period would go away. Like that makes sense. I heard someone say like they were kind of making fun of this old perspective, and they were saying something like, yeah, your house is on fire, but it's just because you're running. Like what? It's fine, you know, like you're just active. It's okay. I thought that was like a really good analogy, because it's like we don't want to dismiss that kind of stuff, you know, like that's just, often it is just an imbalance in nutrition coming in and energy going out. And if we can correct that, provide a little bit of education around that, like we just need to increase, and we get that energy balance back in a good place, that you can train hard and you can train a lot and still get a period. That's so doable for any female athlete, honestly. But it can be tricky, right? I guess in terms of like the menstrual cycle, we know that sometimes people struggle with like the second half of their menstrual cycle being hungrier, feeling like they have more cravings, and we know that there's physiology to that, so that's something I sometimes provide education around. Like, we know that during a time of higher hormone production, our bodies are literally working harder to produce those hormones. Our body temperature is higher. Like, that all takes more energy, so we need to eat more, right? And our blood glucose sensitivity and how we store carbohydrates is a little different too, so we actually need more carbs. So it can be sometimes really helpful, and honestly, like you were saying earlier, Kaylee, like help with some of the shame that a lot of women feel around like eating more carbs, eating more food, like wanting more food that time of the month, like in that phase of the menstrual cycle, that second half, to just know like I can trust my body. There's a reason for this. This is like very normal, and I need to do this. Like sometimes it's just like, again, that education and permission that's so helpful, and just allowing people to be like, oh yeah, like this is what happens. This is fine. For female athletes who are kind of like later on, like perimenopause and postmenopausal for sure, one thing that I see is a lot of like, there can be body changes that occur, and I actually see a lot of kind of underfueling in that population as well, because of the body changes and kind of wanting to like prevent those, and also kind of growing up with like a diet mentality in a lot of cases. So that can be really challenging to address, but it's kind of the same messaging, right, that we would have with any population or any age group of like, we have to eat enough to fuel properly. We have to prioritize things like protein, but we also have to get enough carbs. We have to eat enough food, you know. So that's been a big message that I've worked with some of those athletes on. And that group is its own challenge. Like there's so many just like unfamiliar new things at that time that are really difficult to navigate, and food is a hard one too sometimes. Yeah, so there's a lot. There's so much that go on and on.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. And I have heard like for menopausal women specifically too, like the emphasis on protein. Like, do you think that is like, I mean, that goes for all of us, but especially menopausal women, like, do you think that is like one of the most important things? Or like, I know you said carbs too, but
I do think it's important. I mean, it gets harder, as you guys both know, it gets harder to build and maintain muscle the older we get, and then we don't have that hormonal input anymore, and that makes things hard. So protein's super important for that. And again, our insulin sensitivity changes a little bit after we go through those hormonal changes, and for that reason, protein also, I mean, again, it's like important now too, but like it also becomes important to help with blood sugar regulation even more so, and satiety and things like that. But yeah, like you're saying though, I think one of the challenges with like really increasing protein, and with some of the protein recommendations out there that are very, very high, is that can sometimes come at the expense of other nutrients, namely carbohydrates. So I was literally talking to someone about this today, but sometimes when we increase protein, we really struggle to meet our carb needs, because it's like, you're so full, it's like, this is a lot of food, where am I gonna fit that in? So sometimes that's even a challenge. And then, I mean, for endurance athletes in particular, we actually want to really make sure that we're not going so high in protein that we don't meet our carb needs, because then we're also going to be causing problems metabolically and for our training and our bones and all of that. So sometimes we take protein back down a little bit just to make sure they can meet carb needs, if that makes sense. But yes, I do think in that population, protein is important. Maybe not quite as important as like 2+ grams per kilogram that some people recommend, but it really depends on the athlete, I guess, and their capacity.
Yeah, makes sense.
I know that's probably a specific answer, but do you have any general recommendations for the average person listening in terms of, like, I mean, any idea of how much protein they need to eat slash carb slash fat without having to, like, as simple as possible without having to, like, weigh food or look at labels or things like that, like
Yes.
a feel or anything,
So I guess before I would even go to like a gram number or like a calculation, I think there are a couple of things that I always try to prioritize or look for at like foundationally with any human or athlete. And those two are like eating consistently throughout the day, so like timing of nutrition. And then when it comes to meals in particular, do you get all your food groups at your meals? And if you are checking both of those boxes, like I eat 3 full meals and probably snacks if I'm an endurance athlete, hopefully. I'm not going more than like 3 or 4 hours without eating. And I'm getting protein, carbs, and color at all of my meals, fat included as well. You're probably doing pretty well. Then on top of that, then we get into more of like okay, how many grams of protein maybe do I need? How many carbs do I need generally, maybe based on like my training volume right now? Because that's usually what those carb recommendations are based on. And then like the nitty gritty of like variety, and are we getting fiber, and are we including all types of foods? So it's kind of like, and I don't remember if I phrased it this way at Stride to She, but I think of it as like kind of a hierarchy of like, are we checking these bottom boxes first of like, are we getting enough? And then are we eating consistently? And then once those are checked, then we can go further up to like the more detailed or dialed in kind of components. But certainly 3 meals a day, eating consistently, and then all food groups at all meals feel like really foundational for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess I would say for like, for an endurance athlete, when it comes to protein, I don't usually have people track carbs, at least not in my current population, but sometimes just for fun, I'll have people track protein just to kind of see where they're at. And usually the recommendation is like 1.6 to 2 grams per kilogram for endurance athletes. And that's different than maybe it has been in past years. I think like there's more research that has shown us that endurance athletes do need more because this is a catabolic or like breakdown activity. I'm sure you guys know that too, but we do need a good amount of protein to recover and make sure that we're hitting those needs.
Yeah, I remember when I was in college, we were told and I minored in nutrition. So my nutrition classes, I think it was 0.8 to 1.2 if you're a high level athlete.
Crazy.
It was 1.2. It's just it is crazy. And that was probably 8 years ago now. But I don't think that, like at the time, that's what I think we thought,
Yeah,
So it
totally.
is just it's interesting. And again, like high level athlete, I never read a single textbook in kinesiology class in college or in a nutrition class that ever like called out, that's not true. I guess maybe some of them did call it like runners or cyclists, but not like specific from a high level athlete, right? It would just kind of bottle everyone up in the same group when we are very different. Like you're saying, we're very different athletes. So
Yeah, it was interesting. We've come a ways, right?
yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
Very nice. The other thing I feel like we get talked about a lot is people who get like GI issues while they're running, while they're training, while they're racing. Again, I know this is also like very specific to each individual person, but like, do you have any like general recommendations on how you address this with people? Because I feel like that comes up so much.
Man, you're so right. Like, I can think through so many different scenarios that cause GI distress in runners, or that I've like seen cause GI distress for people. I think timing of nutrition before runs is a big one, and the choice of what people eat before runs is huge as well. And particularly for athletes who run maybe later in the day, like post work or in the afternoon, or even like high school athletes who train after school. I think it's even more challenging, certainly, than running in the morning, where you just kind of get up and eat something quick and get out the door. But one thing I see cause a lot of problems for people is eating too much fiber. And it really depends on the athlete, but too much fiber, too much fat, too much protein, like close to a run is generally not going to go well for the digestive system. All of those nutrients are great generally, but they just take longer to digest. So that can those things can cause GI issues. Too much fiber overall can cause digestive issues for people, especially running later in the day. And sometimes even if I have seen people who habitually eat maybe, and this probably sounds like a rare problem, but for whatever reason in my population I see it a lot. People who just like eat too much fiber in general. There is such a thing as too much fiber. And it causes some mad problems for people. So sometimes even just like generally eating a lot of fiber, even if you do work out in the morning, you'll just have digestive issues where it'll be just like pain, bloating, whatever it is, like urgency, those types of things. So that, I guess that's related to just like regular training. I think sometimes in the summer when it's really hot, there's a higher incidence of digestive issues I see, and that's because the body is just like under more stress, and often as well there's more dehydration. So as kind of an accessory, dehydration causes so many problems with the digestive tract, and a lot of times, especially later in big races, that's what's causing people's digestive issues versus fueling error. It's more of like dehydration, electrolyte imbalance than it is like I ate the wrong thing or my fueling is off. Like 100%, almost 100% of the time, it's like something with hydration. So all that to say, like sometimes if we can correct hydration issues or like be better about hydration, that will solve people's problems too. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's big that comes to mind when it comes to digestive stuff. I mean, fueling errors can cause digestive issues as well, right? Like maybe going from 0 to 100 grams of carbs per hour would do it for sure. Our bodies need time to kind of develop those glucose receptors in our gut so that we can tolerate that kind of carb load, but that takes a minute. We have to train our body for that, so that would cause problems. But yeah, generally it's kind of like issues with timing, food choice, hydration, I would say.
What's your...
What?
You go ahead. What's your go-to before a run? Like, what do you
Me?
recommend? Yeah.
Ooh, for me specifically, I do love graham crackers or Teddy Grahams. Those are kind of my favorite. And lemon lime noon, especially with caffeine if I'm going in the morning. That's like, it sounds like a really gross combination. And I wouldn't recommend it as like a flavor combination, but like those are my go-tos.
Yeah.
What about you guys? What do you do before runs?
Well, I feel like I'm a little bit in a unique situation, right? I've gone so all over the board with nutrition, even since you've met me. From
Both
like
of us have.
disordered eater in high school, it lingers with you forever, I guess. And I didn't even ask ADHD. I'm gonna come back to that, but yeah, some kind of like disordered stuff in high school, and then not eating enough specifically in my early days, and was like, super thin, dropped like very visually it was not good, to almost like overcorrecting that in a sense. And so then the last like, I don't know, 2 years, I was actually eating too much. And so I believe now because of what's going on right now, but like constant like bloating, gassiness, diarrhea, all kinds of like GI stuff all the time. But I was burning, 4,000, 5,000 calories a day. So I was like, I'm just gonna keep eating, right?
Yeah.
And I was slowly gaining weight, but it wasn't until like, a year. And I was like, oh wow, I'm like the heaviest I've ever been in my entire life.
Yeah.
And I'm running like 50-mile weeks. This seems weird. And like 6 months ago, I actually started eating less again and went in the other direction. But it's been such a journey. Like it's so hard, And so like now, to your original question of like what I eat before runs, I tend to do this on podcasts. So
It's our
sorry.
podcast, so
Sorry.
we get tangents.
But I have been doing like such simple. Like I used to do 2 pieces of bread, peanut butter and jelly before every run, like that type of thing. A banana, right? Like 600 probably plus calories. And now I do like some scratch, and that's like it. Even like if it's a morning run. So I'm very diligent on eating before every run and eating after runs. But it's changed a lot. And now like my stomach has felt the best it's ever felt, like ever. And running's been awesome. I feel more on runs than I had before too.
Good. Yes.
Like in the middle of the run. So yeah, it's like literally something like 100 to 150 calories beforehand, maybe a banana.
Yeah.
But like nothing crazy.
Unless it's a long run, then we have like
Well,
breakfast.
Yeah, I guess it depends on
Yes.
when the run is.
That
If
makes
like
sense.
I guess I'm thinking like if it's like an afternoon run or something.
Yeah.
But I just like you said, I'm very big right now on I eat breakfast, I eat lunch, I eat dinner, and those are wins.
Good.
Versus 6 to 7 meals a day, because that turned into 6 to 7 meals a day, and my stomach just didn't seem to like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my wins right now are, so I was the person who fasted before every run,
Yeah.
which now just like looking back is funny, but it's, again, it's diet culture. It's a lot of us. And I I thought I felt good not eating anything before runs. And that's what I did all of, like cross country and after that. It's only been in the last couple of years, especially after like going through acupuncture school, learning about nourishment, learning about like it makes sense now, like, oh, like our cars need fuel to run, like gas to run. Why is my body any different than that? Like I need calories to keep going. Like I can't just like be running on E all the time. And that I think resulted in then I wouldn't eat also after runs either. I was like, cool, I'm just gonna wait until like 11, noon, 1 because I wasn't hungry
Right.
to
Yeah.
refuel or
Very
to
normal.
fuel at all.
Mhm.
And then, that resulted in super bad anxiety, hormonal changes, menstrual issues, like all of the above. And then, anyways, now coming back again, realizing like, oh, my body does need this for my cycle and just longevity. So now I'm not the person who eats like the same thing every day. Like I am jealous. I could be like, oh, I'm just gonna have my graham crackers and scratch because that's what I do. Or I have people that are like peanut butter toast every single day.
Yeah.
I like variety. So I'll have I have like these like organic oatmeal packet things that I like, or like we've had banana bread recently, so I'll have like a slice of that, or we have sourdough that we make now, something like that, or like some cereal. I switch it up, but my like wins right now are just like getting anything in the morning. I try to think of it like a carb, but it like usually it's just like something faster. I am like the morning runner, so I'm like
Same.
waking up, and normally like I would just go out the door without anything, and I'm like, Kaylee, like anything. And again, after your talk too, like even if it's like a clementine,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's something,
Yep.
So that's kind of where I'm at
That's great.
right now.
Something's always better than nothing. In these cases.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's great. Yeah. I mean, I went many years without running or without eating before running either. I just didn't know. I didn't know I was supposed to. But then you learn stuff. It's great.
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah, weird. Knowledge is great. Very helpful.
And yeah, like learning that you don't need to then wait, or you shouldn't wait a couple hours after your run to eat, and that's actually not going to help you lose weight, and it's actually just going to like cause other issues.
And
I'd just be like super.
normalizing the low appetite after a run too, I think is really helpful. Like, yeah, that's probably going to be a thing. Maybe a time where we're not going to be like intuitive eaters. We're going to be practical and, like you said, nourish our bodies because we have knowledge that we need to do that, rather than kind of like waiting to get hungry, which might be fueled also by like other thoughts.
Yeah.
But the more you know.
Why do people have low appetite after runs? A lot of times.
It has to do with the appetite hormones. And I am not remembering what the exact names of them are, but essentially just like your appetite hormones are a lot lower after an intense effort. And the result is just like not being hungry. Also, I think sometimes there is, especially after like a long effort or like a more intense effort, the body's more stressed and the digestive system is stressed as well. And I think there is some thought to like the inflammation that occurs with running in the digestive tract that can also kind of blunt appetite hormones. I think there's some theories about that, but kind of a variety of reasons. But it is very normal, which I think is really helpful for people to know at the end of the day.
But that you should still be eating something.
Get something in.
And like chocolate milk is, I know you talked about that like at the Stride to Sheet too. Like we always have our organic chocolate milk, I feel like, on hand, just like a quick something before like showering, like just to get something in the body.
If you can't eat something, can you drink something? And again, like something's better than nothing. If you can have like a package of fruit snacks, like that's still better than being like, I can't.
Yeah. Okay. Vegetarians and vegans.
Yes.
We both have a lot of clients and patients like that. I love recommending like grass-fed beef and like just all of like the meats and proteins. How can you meet your nutrition requirements as a vegetarian and vegan?
I think it can absolutely be done. With veganism, we do have to consider supplementation for like our B12, for example, because we can't get that in terms of meeting like those types of micronutrient needs. But we can definitely meet our protein, carb, fat needs in those populations. I guess one of the challenges, I mean, we do have to be really thoughtful. I think one of the challenges can be that a lot of the proteins that are vegan or vegetarian also come with fiber. Where if you think about like, beans have fiber, tofu doesn't have as much, but like lentils have fiber versus like grass-fed beef or chicken. Like those proteins don't have fiber, fish, eggs. And so I think that can make it challenging sometimes to eat the volume of protein you might need to meet your protein needs in particular as a vegetarian or vegan athlete. Certainly if you're vegetarian, it is a little bit easier if you can eat dairy and eggs. Like those are huge go-tos for me with clients who don't eat meat, like Greek yogurt, milk, cheese, eggs. They're just such great nutrient-dense sources of protein that I love to recommend. But we just have to be really thoughtful still about getting enough in and not overdoing it on the protein. The fiber. So sometimes it actually can be really helpful to include a protein supplement if we're talking about protein in particular. And I know like it is totally possible to meet your protein needs without that, but for some people who struggle, that can be really useful and there's nothing wrong with that. I think we also just like want to be thoughtful about diversifying the protein sources that we're using and the grains, and even being thoughtful about like, can we combine grains and proteins that end up being like more complete, and like grains that have more protein and that type of thing. I guess I'm really focusing on protein, but I think that is the biggest challenge with the volume for those athletes. And so it's kind of figuring out like how to make sure you're getting enough in a way that your stomach can still tolerate it. And then if there is any specific nutrient or micronutrient that is challenging, then we figure out maybe a way to supplement or even like find a different source of that nutrient, if that makes sense. Sometimes it can be really helpful to kind of like fiber-wise focus on something lower fiber, like a white pasta instead of a whole wheat pasta, or a white rice instead of a brown rice, or like white flour tortillas, or etc. in those populations as well, because we want to make sure we don't overdo it in that area, and those people can still meet their needs without feeling like super full. So that's kind of like my big picture answer. Does that feel, I guess, do those kinds of like points make sense? Like, what other questions? I mean, what comes up? There's got to be other questions you have. I feel like I was really overviewing it there.
I mean, specific to vegetarian and vegan, I have so many questions just for you in general. I'm like, we should have you back on the pod and just like do a questions episode. Seriously, I really do feel like 30 questions I could just, and you could just give us some answers. So many listeners that we could be like, or clients and whatnot, be like,
Yeah.
we answered them in the podcast. Here's
Go
the
listen.
answer.
Yeah, yeah.
I got like questions about like organic stuff, dyes, seed oil. Like it'd be so fun to go into all of that because I'm sure everyone wants to know it. But like, vegetarian, vegan, even like we could spend an hour talking about that. Like I had someone ask the other day if they're a vegetarian and they don't want to eat soy because they're afraid it's bad for them. For example, that's what came to mind, I guess, when you're like, do you have any other specific questions for that topic?
Like, is soy bad in general, you mean?
Yeah, because we were trying to brainstorm. Yeah, with this person specifically, we were trying to brainstorm very briefly protein sources for like someone who's a vegetarian. And I was like, soy and like tofu and things. And they were worried that soy was bad for them. And then I was like, well, I don't know.
Like estrogen dominance, like
You
you've
know?
heard those things now. So
Yeah, and I mean, the research on that I've read is so varied. Like some will say, I mean, I've even read something about things like about those compounds in soy actually binding and helping to excrete excess estrogen. So that's even like the flip side of what a lot of people think of when they think of like ingesting soy and like, oh, that's going to make my estrogen go up. So I mean, I feel like I can't even speak confidently to like that I guess I'll just say like a myth maybe, because I don't know that that's true in general, but I know that there's a lot of messaging about it. I can say that, right? Like one way or another on soy. It's not something I would ever discourage someone from using as a protein source.
Right.
I guess I would say that.
All right, I'm telling them that.
Okay.
More soy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I don't think it's bad.
I mean, honestly, like
But
a lot of people who don't drink dairy milk, and I guess this would maybe be more for like the vegans, will choose something like almond milk or oat milk, and no shade on those choices, but like when we compare that to just cow's milk, the protein content is just like non-existent. And so for that reason, I do like to recommend like a soy milk, or like the Ripple milk is like pea protein, but some kind of a milk that has been fortified with protein or just has it in general, just to get that in there. Not that oat milk isn't delicious, but it's just like another consideration, you know. And then I guess I think that is like when an athlete is a vegetarian, I always try to explore if there are especially other restrictions. How can we reduce the number of restrictions if possible? And that I would talk about with anybody, right? If you're a vegetarian, how can we be as diverse with that diet as possible and feel good about it, assuming nothing, bothers your digestive tract or that kind of thing? Because it's already going to be more challenging to meet your needs, right? In general. So, nice to feel like you can have all vegetarian foods if possible.
can I ask one more question? You have time for one more question?
Sure. Yes.
What are the risks on longevity for endurance athletes when it comes to underfueling? In general.
Well, we know that there is some risk of cardiovascular disease with female athletes in particular who don't have regular menstrual cycles for a long period of time. Like the incidence of cardiovascular disease goes up because one of the things that estrogen does is help maintain the health of our cardiovascular system. So I can speak to that one in terms of longevity. Otherwise, like true lifespan longevity. But I guess in terms of like running longevity, I think that there are a lot of risks to underfueling chronically. I mean, bones are the biggest one that comes to mind for me. Like our long-term bone health is very dependent on our ability to get enough food. I mean, there's a lot of focus on like getting enough calcium and getting enough vitamin D, and certainly those are important, but if we're not eating enough, it doesn't really matter how much calcium we're getting, frankly. So I think it's bones that I really think about. And then, I mean, if we're unable to like support our muscles to support our joint health, right, and our like the joints that support our running, because we're not eating enough to like build and maintain muscle, then also I would think that your joints would be more at risk of that wear and tear. Which we're using our joints anyways, but if we don't have the muscle mass to support, our bones, our muscles and our bones, frankly, right? Like I think that could shorten our running career as well. Be like a career-ending injury or a stress fracture in your hip that requires surgery or a back issue, things like that it's really hard to come back from. So I think like it's the bone density thing that's probably the biggest one for me. That's something I see I've seen fairly frequently is really low bone density, and in people who are not that old. We can recoup bone density too. Like it's not something that once it's low, it never comes back. Like to a certain extent, you can build that back, especially with strength training and proper nutrition. But that's the thing that I always think of, really want to be on top of. And obviously that goes right along with strength training for bone health. But yeah, hopefully, does that answer your question? Was that the angle you were hoping for?
I wasn't even sure what I was hoping for, to be honest with you. Well, I was just kind of curious. It's almost like in the short term, it could be. It's hard to pick one thing, I guess. Muscle, tendon, things like that. But when we think about years down the line, or maybe not even years, I guess, I don't know if it's like a chronically underfueling, it then can lead to things as drastic as fractures, bones, etc. And hormone stuff in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moral of the story: eat enough.
Yes.
And eat frequently. Eat always.
That's the title. Moral of the story.
Yes.
Eat enough.
Eat enough.
Eat enough. Don't listen to everything you hear on the internet.
Don't do that.
Don't listen to everything you hear on the internet.
Just the three of us. That's the only people.
Just vet your sources, please.
Yes.
That's all I ask.
Yes.
There is good information on the internet. There is. There's some really good follows out there. And I'm not just talking about us. Like there are other people who do a great job. But we should just be careful, be critical.
Yeah. And we should take everything with a grain of salt, in my opinion. Like you said, with good for one person may not be good for us, and that's right. Okay.
Exactly.
What works for somebody else.
Yeah, trust your body.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Big deal.
Jillian, we would love to wrap up with asking what your we get to do this moment is. This is something that we always end all of our pod episodes with. So this can be from today, from this week, from this year. Like, what's a moment when you're like, wow, I get to do this?
I'm just going to say the one that comes to mind the most quickly. But this speaks to kind of the women's hormone piece. Like I recently got to see a photo of a baby from a past client who, when I was working with her, like wasn't getting a period, had really struggled with like disordered eating, underfueling, and that kind of thing. And like obviously went through the process, did all the work to like work on all of her food stuff, eat more, even though it was really hard, like fuel training appropriately. And I got to be with her for that part of things. Like getting a period back is always so exciting when I get to like hear that news, but then like to get a picture of a baby, like that's so amazing. Like I got to be like a part of that story. I didn't really speak to that today, but like that was very cool to be like, I get to do this. This is so fun. Like to be part of someone's life, right? Like I know you guys do this too, but there's so much relationship forming in this work. and you get to just like learn more about people, and I don't know, be a part of like more of their story. And so anyway, that is my get to do it. I get to do this. It's very cool.
You're
Love
literally
it.
changing lives.
I hope
That's
so.
awesome. You are. So thank you for all the work that you do and for the empowerment that you do and helping people have babies if they want to have babies and continuing to run. Like, it's very cool what you do. So thank you. And how can people find you? Like, how do they follow you? Where can people work with you?
I have an Instagram account that I have not been good about doing anything on, but I'm trying to be better. It's at Jillian.rd and Instagram, and then my website is JillianRD.com. Very easy. And then there's all the contact info, and you can reach out. It's very easy to get in touch with me that way. So hopefully
Perfect.
it's straightforward.
And we'll put all that in the show notes too for listeners, so you can find Jillian's information in the show notes. So thank you so much for being here, and I would love to have a part 2 with you at some point, because there's just, I feel like the nutrition topic in world is just very vast. So
Yeah, and I don't have all the answers either. Like if you do a question episode, I may very well be like, I don't know.
well, it changes too. I mean, like you were saying, like the research is constantly changing. Like in 2, 5, 10 years, like stuff we've been talking about today might be different.
Totally.
And
Yes.
I think that's okay too. But like, this is the knowledge that we have right now, and that's what we get to go off of. So,
Right.
yeah. But thank you for your time. We appreciate you. And thanks to all the listeners for being on today. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.
Wow, Kaylee, we made it through another episode. What do you think?
We would love if you would go give us a follow, a 5-star review, and comment on the episode and what you liked and what you'd like to see more of.
See you next time.
We get to do this